What's up guys, it's Ash, welcome to a new video. In today's video we've got some tactics and instructions for the 5-4-1 formation, but just before we get started I'd appreciate it if you could drop this a thumbs up as it does help me a lot. It's team of the season, so if you guys need any coins make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. Alright guys, so starting off with today's custom tactics, in the defensive style we like to have this on balance. This is because it gives us the greatest control over our defense, where when we need to press, we're able to press, but then when we want to drop off and be a little bit more passive and conservative, we're also able to do that. So balance does give you the very much needed control. Now moving on to the defensive width guys, because this is a 5 at the back formation, I actually like having the width a little bit higher than I would in other formations. This is because we have more players to spread out across the pitch, which means we can use a slightly higher width as there won't be as many gaps. So 47 means we're still primarily going to be like compact and narrow, but we still have a bit of natural width to cover the wide areas in case an opponent tries to go down the wing. Super useful to have a higher width with a 5 at the back formation in my opinion. Now moving on to the depth guys, I like to have this on about 55. This is a really nice balanced defensive line, so sometimes we can win the ball higher up the pitch and other times we can sit a little bit deeper. We don't want to have a super low depth, otherwise it feels like we're getting pinned back all the time, and on the flip side we don't want to have a super high depth, otherwise we can get caught out with things like through balls, which is not good either. Now moving on to the build up play guys, I like to have this on balance. This is because it's the most controlled and the most varied. So when you want to play slowly you're able to do that, when you want to play quickly you're able to do that. You're really able to mix it up and get the most out of the team. If you use something like slow build up, for example, you're always going to have to play slowly. If you try and play fast build up, you're always going to have to play quickly. So balance just allows you to mix it up and use what is suited for that moment. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I suggest using direct passing. This is because direct passing is the most meta option you can use. Basically your attacking players will bunch up against the defenders, so you can do the really overpowered 1v1 isolation plays. Players also make the extra movements in the box so you can guarantee those goals with that extra pass. Super useful to use. Now moving on to the attacking width guys, I like to have this at about 48. It's not a specific number you need to use, but the reason for this is I don't like having a super low width, otherwise it feels like your players are just way too close together, and I don't like having a super high width either, as it feels like you have to fire missiles just to get a simple pass off to one of your teammates. So I kind of just like to go for a bit of a balance, so it's neither like too narrow or super wide. It just seems to work with this balance. Now moving on to players in box, I like to have this on 5. This is bang in the middle. This is so we can get some players into the box to create those chances, but we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we get counter-attacked. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1 because there is a corner kick routine that I use which requires these to be on 1. There is a link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the players you want to use guys, in the striker position, because this is a 1 striker formation, I suggest going for a nice well-rounded striker. It's especially important in this formation as sometimes you do lack attacking support. As you can see, we've just got like that 1 striker, so it's important you use a nice well-rounded striker so they can do a bit of everything from hold up play to really good dribbling to shooting on either side. You really want a nice well-rounded striker as you get the most out of the team that way. If you use a one-dimensional player you might struggle a bit as you're limited to just crosses and through balls. Now moving on to the right mid and the left mid, you're going to want to use like winger style players, just decent attacking players really. You don't have to worry about their defensive stats as it's not super important. We obviously do have 5 at the back as well, so you really don't have to stress about these players having like super good defensive stats. If you can have good defensive stats it's an added bonus, but it's really not a necessity. Just go for these good players on the wider areas. Now moving on to the left centre mid, I like to go for a more defensive minded player. This is somebody that's going to stay back, break up the play and add defensive security. So you're going to want somebody with a medium high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in defence and they're not too bothered about going forward. Now moving on to the right centre mid, we like to go for a more box to box style player. This is somebody that is going to attack and defend and have a bit of a free roll, so you're going to want somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, but just ensure that they have a nice well-rounded card. Now moving on to the left wing back and the right wing back, I suggest maybe going for a balance between the two, but what you're going to want is at least like one actual winger in one of the wing back positions. This is so you have somebody that is very good in attack, because these wing backs will be flying forward. So you don't want to use like incompetent attackers here, otherwise you might struggle, but you can go for a balance like what I do, where I have like one fullback in the left wing back position and then an actual winger in the right wing back position. But you can use two actual wingers if you want to, or you can use two fullbacks. Just beware, like if you use two fullbacks, you might struggle to go forward a little bit. As for the three centre backs and the keeper, these just need to be meta players. There's not really too much to say about them, to be honest with you. Now moving on to the player instructions, guys. On the striker, I have him on stay central and mixed attack. We have him on stay central because he is like our only striker, so it is important that he's always in the correct positions. We don't want him drifting off wide, especially because we've already got a lot of wide players in this formation. We need him to stay central, so he's always where we need him to be. We also have him on mixed attack, as I feel like you get a lot more out of the player this way. If you put him on getting behind in this formation, he feels very disconnected from the rest of the team, and it limits you in attack, where you just have to do things like through balls all the time. Not always the best. So mixed attack means they're going to get a bit more involved in the build up, and you're just going to get a lot more out of the striker overall. Now moving on to the left mid and the right mid, we have them on comeback on defense, cut inside, getting behind and get into the box for cross. We have them on comeback on defense, so they always keep the correct defensive shape. If you have them on basic defensive support, sometimes they can be a bit lazy and they don't keep the correct shape off the ball, so it's important we have them on comeback on defense for that reason. We also have them on cut inside, so they do seem to make runs into like those narrow areas, which are very difficult for your opponent to defend. This will make a bit more sense when we get onto the wing backs as well. So cut inside, super useful to have on the right mid and the left mid. We also have them on getting behind, so they're always looking to make those runs down the wing, so we get the most out of the players. If you don't have them on getting behind, sometimes these players can be a little bit useless as they kind of just sit and watch, and these players do need to get down the wing as we need to create attacks, of course. We also have them on getting to the box across, so they're not hesitant to get into the penalty area. Sometimes they can be a little bit static and passive if we have them on balanced crossing runs, so sometimes we do actually want them to get into the box, and it just means that we get better movement out of these players. Now moving on to the left centre mid, the more defensive minded player, we have him on stay back while attacking and cover centre. We have him on stay back, so he doesn't want to go forward, he is defensive of course, and then we have him on cover centre, so he does cover those central areas. Moving on to the right centre mid, where we've got a box to box player, we have him on default settings and cover centre. We have him on the default settings because he has a bit of a free roll, we don't really want to restrict him, and then we have him on cover centre, so he does defend the central areas. Now moving on to the right wing back and the left wing back, we have them on join the attack and overlap. This is so we can add extra width to this formation and really stretch our opponents. This also goes hand in hand with some of the instructions we've got on the right mid and the left mid. So if we take a look at habits here, my left mid, we have him on cut inside, which means he's going to be cutting inside and getting into those more narrow areas. But then you can see on the wing back, we've got him on join the attack and overlap. So when the left mid and the right mid are running narrow, these players are going to make the overlapping runs to keep the width of the formation. This means we have players in narrow areas and wide areas at the same time. It's super hard to defend against for your opponent, so I do suggest it, to be honest with you. As for the three centre backs and the goalkeeper, these are on the default settings and I do not touch them. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 5-4-1. If you have enjoyed, found this useful, please be sure to drop it a thumbs up, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. And with all that aside guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out guys, love ya.